Move to accept it as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Did we change chairman?
Oh, who's chairman?
Scott?
Sorry, force of habit, Scott. I'm so sorry.
I was thinking the same thing, but I wasn't gonna
Isn't
say.
it the
You
planning
know
board
what
meeting
Red
already?
said
That
to-
was great.
Here we are. What's the habit?
Do you-
Who's the
Guys
chairman?
got to
this time?
switch seats.
Do you know what Rhett said to Scarlett? Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Which meeting we in?
Oh, my. I'm clearly overtired.
Yeah, well, that's right to
No,
Sudbury.
Go get her today.
So Drew, if you'd like me to continue on after
Yeah,
the
would you
motion,
please pick up where I
okay,
left
that's
off?
fine.
Thank you.
It's more like just throw it in Jessica's lap when we're done here, so.
Pass around the table.
Approval agenda, we've done that. Other business, new business. We have this to review, and this, I believe the purpose of this meeting is to finalize these definitions, changes, what have you, to these
Yes,
ordinance items, so they can be presented to the planning board.
Correct.
yes.
Okay, so that is our goal for this evening, and I guess let's start with number one.
Oh, let's do that.
This was, again, took most of our time, the short-term rental. The only one change we see there is suggest otherwise and not less than 30 days on a non-transient. That's on the front page.
That's on the
So
front
let's handle those two, then we can turn the page.
Sure.
Any further conversation? We want to go with the otherwise, or? Hearing none, I will.
So I just want to make sure I understand where that otherwise is being plugged in. So.
Take out the word normally and using otherwise.
Okay,
would otherwise
that's
be
what I was
considered.
gonna ask the
Okay,
same
good.
thing.
Okay,
What was it replacing? Thank you.
all right.
So is it
Excellent.
replacing normally? I'm not.
Yes.
Is
Yep.
it? Okay.
Yeah, take out normally and suggest otherwise.
This came from the conversation we had with town council, John and I, last week.
Yeah.
It all blends together,
Sometime
right?
before tonight.
Get a little punchy, you guys. Okay, on the non-transient, describes a room, number of rooms or dwelling unit that is offered for rent in increments not less than 30 days.
Yeah.
You
that
good with
makes
that?
sense.
Okay.
Okay. The first page is behind us. And we'll just move on down to what's highlighted in green, if that's okay by everybody, because that's,
Business criteria.
yep. Home business, an accessory or use of a dwelling for a business which results in a product or service. It is a business which is carried on by a resident or residents who shall have their residence in the dwelling unit, which is clearly subordinate to the residential use of the dwelling unit, and which complies with all of the criteria outlined in section 333, home business criteria. And Jess, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, so the language that's in red was suggested by Tara. So that's the stuff that we've kind of, we've already looked at that.
Mhm.
So when I sent this over to town council, his comment is in green. And then after the discussion, my comments are in blue. So we pretty much came to the conclusion that it's probably best if we just leave home business the way it is, not include short-term rentals into that, because it really falls in its own use.
Okay,
Mhm.
so,
And it sort of starts muddying the waters over here if you're adding it into a home business.
so this would delete even the red
It would
portion of it?
delete the
Yes.
red.
So
Yep.
the what ends in criteria, everything above that remains the same.
Yep, and sort of in the
And
below.
below the
after
blue.
After the blue, that is existing.
So
Okay.
you wouldn't have a statement about short-term rentals or it would not be a home business?
No, so it's gonna just stay, it's gonna stay on its own, and the short-term rental is covered under
Mhm.
its own use.
that makes
under the
sense.
own
Yeah, it does
That
make
definition.
makes-
sense.
Yes, that makes
Instead of
sense now.
Adding it here, right? Is that,
Yep.
And also the short-term rental will be regulated through the selectmen's permitting process.
right?
Instead, because this would kind of.
Can you use your microphone?
Site.
Mike,
Right,
all right, okay.
yes,
Thank you.
that was a
But I'm glad you
valid
did
point.
that.
So it would not be It would be separate and controlled through the selectmen's permitting process and not through the planning board.
Okay. So that comes out.
Yep.
The blue and the green actually come out in it.
Okay,
As well
so,
And the red,
As the
And,
red, yeah.
and the red.
and the
Yep.
red.
Okay.
so on that premise, if we were all in agreement with that, do we go back to the first paragraph on page 1 and remove the reference to home business? Which is the third line down 3/4 to the right?
Right, in
Yeah.
that explanation. what's-
Yes.
Yeah.
Term rental.
It should come out of
Yep.
there. Good
Okay.
catch.
Yeah,
Carol.
that's good.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, that's a-
I may
that's a
not
good
have
catch.
got that at this point in the game.
That's my moment of the night.
Okay, we'll move down to lodging house, a building where the owner or a live-in manager is present overnight during the period of rental for non-transient use. Yeah,
That one's
That
fine.
was
That-
covered
That
last
one
time.
was
Yeah, that
covered.
was
We're
fine,
we're
right?
good with
Yeah.
that one.
I'm sorry, I didn't pick up the green, not green there. Okay.
It's okay.
So
Article 3.
Article 300. Jess, you want to address this?
So
Because it
this,
has more blues and greens. and-
yeah, So this was a section to where, in the wording in red, was very specific. That it just talked about only being allowed on town or state maintained roads. Or a private road that is not subject to, that waiver. The, like the private road and class 6 building permit waiver. So that was my question is, so what about class 6 roads? And we discussed it even further. Well, what about private roads that have to do with, a subdivision that hasn't been, taken over by the town yet, things like that. So, so we kind of talked about that and
But if a road is not been accepted by the town and it's built to class 5 specs, is it still considered a class 5 or is it considered a class 6 road?
No, it's not considered, if it's a private road,
Right,
then it's a private road
okay, until,
adopted by the town.
right,
So
okay,
If it
it
meets
could
the-
be a private road, which is poorly maintained
right,
or something, but it's not, they're, the class 6, if you say class 6, you're talking about a municipal road,
okay.
municipally owned road, class 6. And then we
So
also-
we'll not have a class distinction on a non-approved
Yeah,
town.
a private, if it's a private road, what we've been doing is if it's a private road that's off here, if it's a road that's approved by the planning board, a subdivision approved by the planning board, and we've not been requiring the waiver of liability because we know those roads are built
Right,
to the appropriate standard. We get on some of these other private roads.
like the Chamberlain Road up in the middle there.
Yeah, well, that's class 6.
Right,
But
Correct.
let's go down into the basin, into Roberts Cove Basin, those little roads back there.
yep,
Those are private.
yep,
And they can build off of them. For that, we would require they fill out a waiver of liability that is the same as the class 6 road.
right, that
We
makes
have
sense.
that waiver for private and we have that waiver for island properties. And we would ask that they fill that out. We require they fill it out, we get it recorded, and then essentially it just says, we'll do our best to get there, but if we can't, we can't.
Yeah.
And you're assuming that liability.
Well, I always told you,
The question here is, do we want to restrict the short-term rentals on those roads? Class 6 roads that require a waiver and the other roads that require a waiver. Conversation with, and I'll let you take over here, with Stephen was, I think it was because we're doing the waiver
Mhm.
and but the question is, even though the property owner is doing the waiver, what about the people that are renting?
Right.
They may be unaware that there is a waiver in
They're
existence.
unaware.
they would most likely
Right.
be unaware.
Yeah,
Emergency services may not be able to make it there,
right.
Right.
so.
And I believe his recommendation was to ensure that the homeowner put some sort of caveat in their contract. Is that what we had discussed?
That's what we discussed, but we can't.
Boy,
I did,
That doesn't,
or some-
that's kind of like hopeful.
However,
Just,
requiring the
know.
posting within that SDR I think, in the unit,
Right.
might
Some,
be more appropriate.
somewhere, somehow, so that people are aware that that's a potential that emergency
Right.
Well,
services may or
That's
may
not-
not.
I would
vehicles
say
have to get in.
on the back of the entrance door, like you would in a hotel room.
Right.
Yeah, but good luck on, that's not gonna take the town away from having liability. on
No,
this,
no, it's not.
Not really,
Which is really the bigger issue, isn't it?
unless.
That's a great point. I really hadn't thought of that kind of perspective.
Well,
but you're right. That
maybe
is
the
a real-
selectmen should look into this and talk with town council more. Maybe there's a hold harmless and as well as the waiver that say, since you might be renting this out, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
I don't know.
But there's,
I know
Wasn't
enough
this-
law to know that the liability would still be there, huh?
This in the
That's what I'm
green, wasn't
afraid
this
of.
from the lawyer?
Yes.
Yes,
So this is what he is stating.
right. And he
Yeah.
didn't bring up sort of what we just,
Yeah, I know.
Noted.
He didn't bring that up.
right.
Well, he did say in the alternate, the town could prohibit the STR use unless on the
Right.
town maintained road.
This
Which,
language would mean that the STR could lawfully be operated by
And I think,
class 6.
if we want to try and get something at least before the voters, I think that we probably ought to restrict and say only on town maintained roads, at least this time through.
Well, then I'll throw this in there. We have subdivisions in place that have roads that have been built, were approved and built, that are still private roads.
Mhm.
Scott owns one.
yep.
John Gentry owns one up there. Cedar Cove, DeWitt Drive is not a town road.
Right.
So these have been built to standard.
Okay, how about we do the double negative? How about we say that are not subject to a waiver?
The waiver of liability.
Right, so as long as they're on a road that is not subject to that waiver of liability, then they can have that STR.
That sounds much cleaner to me.
I would run that by council.
Say that one more
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I like that though.
If you have to get,
Explain that one more time.
if you have to get the waiver of liability, okay, you come to me, you want to build on the middle of Chamberlain Road, which is class 6. You have to do that waiver of liability. If worded the way Drew says, you can't have a short-term rental out there. Because you've got a waiver of liability in there, and even though it's waivered,
Mhm.
I show up from wherever and rent, I don't know that waiver's there. I just know that you say I can get here. I'm assuming, I'm coming from someplace where I'm assuming that if I have a heart attack, the ambulance can get up the road.
Mhm.
So, and if I can't, then even if I don't succeed in court, it still happens.
Mhm.
See that, and that's the thing
Right.
about suing. Not
right.
only do we
No.
want to avoid losing, but we want to avoid going there, period.
Right, because the outcome is never a guarantee.
And the outcome's never guaranteed, but it's a waste of time and effort.
And
So I
money,
would say that if you had to get the waiver to build,
Mhm.
you can't have a short-term rental. If you're in a subdivision where the road's approved, built to standards, blah, 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 it's not, it's the same as building on a regular class 5 town road. It's not an issue.
so we're going back to the original red wording.
Okay, so now I have a question. So what about those old private roads with houses that already exist that never
Which is gonna
need-
happen.
that never needed that waiver because that was not in place at the time?
And
What
That's
about-
right. And there's gonna be
like,
quite a
kinda
few.
what about-
Sawmill Brook Road, that's
what
gonna be
about
one
those?
there's all kinds of them.
Oh, there's a lot of them.
A lot of, yeah,
There's a lot of them,
Wording.
Yeah.
especially in the bay.
How do you explain
Right.
that without it getting
Those
too
little
wordy?
things.
I don't have an answer to that question.
One right below your
Yeah.
house is one of them.
My concern would still be even if the owner of the property signed that liability waiver, that doesn't preclude the town from still being sued by the short-term. rental.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about,
Right.
My thought is, if you did the waiver, you don't get the short-term rental.
what about a sign on where it turns to class 6? You go up to Alton Shores and there's a sign before Cynthia. This is the end of where we take care of, pass at your own risk.
Yeah, but again, it's,
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna avoid the potential liability for the town.
They'll still sue you.
Yeah, well,
I think,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Particularly if the town has given them permission to do the short-term rental there, because it will be, the selectmen will be the ones
Yes.
approving the thing. So the town will be saying, yes, you can. Even though there's we're saying we're not liable, it's still,
You need legal.
but we do, legally, we do things like that all the time. town docks, town beach. If, you know, enter at your own risk. We're not liable. I mean, we
Yeah,
have
but
these
even-
situations.
The sign says we're not liable. However,
They're gonna sue you anyway.
Doesn't stop the suit.
The thing about
Or
it
they,
is,
or they can try.
if they could find a ray of negligence, they go right by.
Oh,
it.
they will. They will. I mean, I'm saying we do have that exists in the town already with all town properties.
You park your car in a garage in
Mhm.
Boston and you pay a ticket to park that car. And there could be signs all over the place saying, not responsible for your vehicle or contents. They are responsible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're still
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
responsible.
That's why a lot of times I was saying, we do a lot of signs, we do a lot of signs on the roads. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
The more signs you have, the less they read them.
And that's right.
Oh, no wonder, Matt, you'll
That's
figure
right.
that out.
I think going back to this original, at least red wording that was in
Mhm.
here.
Yep.
I think is as protective as we can be and still get something going.
yeah, that has not been subject to of a waiver. So, and that just says that, and has been approved by a planning board.
Mhm. Then just go back to the red
The first
and
paragraph.
leave it right in the red and leave it at that.
Yeah, and then I think it's gonna be up to the selectmen to
Mhm.
use some judgment as well.
Yeah.
I think you should get another opinion from the attorney.
Well, we still
think so
can.
too,
I think
but-
we still should. But we should, can we adopt, go back
Well-
to the red and then talk to?
I think
Legal
part of
counsel.
that, you can pick up in your permitting process. There's a
Mhm.
avenue there to, if we did miss something, you can catch it in your permitting process.
Correct.
We could go back to Stephen.
I think you should.
Because I don't think he thought about that
We could
aspect. of
still,
this.
we could still move this forward to the board.
Yeah,
Mhm.
To the planning board, but we could get another reading, a final reading from Stephen.
I think that would,
To get a
in my
little bit
opinion, I'd
Better
like to see,
clarification.
that would be definite to go back to legal counsel on that.
And do we even take it a step further and just add at the end of this, and is accessible year round to all emergency vehicles? I don't know.
I think that it'd be good to have something like that in there.
Yeah.
Because it's also, it's a tickler as well for the selectmen when they're going through that
Except,
permit.
except for the
approval
people
process.
that do this and they're not, and they close it down for the winter. There's gonna be a certain amount of people that only Airbnb
yep.
6 months of the year, and then the other 6 months that it's closed down, shut down, and nobody's there.
Then you can just say while in operation. as a
While in
short-
operation.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's accessible while in operation.
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
Right.
So I think we have handled Article 200 at this point. So I guess we need to have a motion to move this to the board, planning board or not.
I
think we got,
Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Is that it?
What's that?
This was just comment.
Yeah,
Just comments. That's it for that one.
For Article
Yeah.
200.
Article 200, correct.
So do we want to discuss that rationale? So on
Sure.
the very top page of page 4 is a suggested
How do we,
rationale. So because this blue, it was supposed to be a light turquoise, and when it printed, it's like dark blue. You can't read it. If you go to the very last page of this packet,
I
I
can read it.
printed out the comments from Drew. So you can just refer to that page. That's,
I can still see it. I don't know. if
yeah,
anybody-
it's terrible. I'm gonna change that when I print them out again. I'm gonna fix that.
well, there's different shades you can pick, aren't there? Yeah.
Yeah, so. So I attached that
Yep.
last
But
page.
you've been challenged on all the colors.
Looks like a rainbow.
But that's for all the articles you're saying, what Drew is putting in?
He did put in some suggestions for every one of them, except for 2 new ones that I added at the end.
You added 7 and 8, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, if we can just go over that rationale.
Where the hell do you see 7 and 8?
That's 7 and 8 are in the end here.
Oh,
After
okay. I
six,
thought
7 and 8,
I thought this
which is,
page.
Oh, no,
no, this one here, 7 and 8 is
no,
not
because those are
on.
new.
These are the
Okay.
rational wording from Drew. Going back to amendment number 1, right?
Yep.
Language looks okay to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Drew's in support too.
I think he is.
Drew, do you think you like those?
I'll support that new
Do
wording.
you want to change that, Drew?
So that's a check. We're good with that?
Well,
Yeah.
we should,
Do you want to vote on everyone?
yes, we got to
individually?
vote on everyone. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to accept and bring forward the plan to the planning board proposal amendment number 1, Article 200 definitions.
Seconded.
On a motion by Paul, seconded by Dan. Any further discussion?
Doug.
Doug, I'm sorry. Doug,
Can I,
Other brother.
can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
So, Paul, you specified Article 200 definitions, but it actually includes there's
The whole
Article
amendment.
300. I would, so
Just say
I
Article
would just
200?
suggest to
Article
move forward
200.
Article, proposed amendment number 1.
okay,
Okay.
Leave it simple like that.
Okay.
Doug, you all right with the change?
Yeah, that's fine. So he's gonna have to rephrase it.
Okay,
Want me to rephrase the whole thing?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. I make a motion to approve bringing forward to the planning board a proposal for amendment number 1.
Seconded.
any further, on a motion by Paul, seconded by Doug. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay. Article number 2.
Conversations or changes to.
Yep,
Mhm.
so that looks like we should be ready to move that one forward.
Just the rationale.
Just the,
Yep.
in
Yep.
blue.
Yeah, and that was just a mixing up of your words a little bit.
And yeah,
So-
mine weren't always the greatest. Something to put in there.
Okay?
Yep.
I'll entertain a motion for amendment 2.
So I'll make a motion to move amendment number 2 to the planning board.
I'll second.
On a moment, yeah. On a motion by Drew, seconded by Paul. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, amendment number 3. We see planning board chairs words. If everybody's good, I'll entertain a motion.
I guess the only thing I would wonder about is, do you want to stipulate the number of minimum campsites allowed? In the, with respect to the rationale?
Oh, in the rationale.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, the number of minimum, which will, yeah,
Yeah.
and which will be 2.
Yeah,
To be
exactly.
two.
Just
Yeah,
be
okay,
more
2.
explicit.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion.
So I'll make a motion to move amendment number 3 forward to the planning board as corrected on the rationale.
I'll second again.
On a motion by Drew, seconded by Paul. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, that was number 3. Number 4, we see Drew's rationale. Any questions on the rationale,
So we have a
So-
comment here from,
The
attorney?
attorney.
Yep.
If this fails.
His comment was that if the amendment fails to pass, we should not go ahead and add it to the zoning ordinance, even though it failed. Because
Okay.
it were preempted anyways by state law.
I stay.
Right, right,
Makes sense.
yeah.
And as a side note, this is already back up on a legislative service request this season,
Is it?
that someone's already addressing
Problems.
Yep.
this
Yeah.
particular change in the law.
That was quick.
Okay. Didn't take long.
so
Should we just,
I don't know how it got past me. Anyway, go ahead.
should we just scrap it? Or
No,
not?
Yeah, I wonder, no, I think that's a valid point. Do we even want to bring it up as a point?
Opinions.
Yeah, I mean,
That's,
I think it doesn't hurt mentioning and bringing it up as the amendment. If we have to change it next year, we will.
No, but I'm saying, I mean, if your hands are tied at the town on this whole thing, what's the point of having the
the state's
amendment
going
at
to
all?
govern it at this point in
The
time.
state does govern it, yes.
Right, but if we don't change it, then
But he's-
the appearances of someone researching, geez, where can I put a church?
Oh,
The town's telling them
I think it
no.
should stay in there.
Yeah, but if I'm not mistaken by what the ordinance or the law says, they can put it anywhere.
Basically, I think
That's what it says.
So
Jessica's point is if someone is not aware of the law and comes here and says, well, you know, okay, well, look, no.
we can't put a church.
Can't put a church.
It helps to minimize confusion. It makes us puts us in line with what the
Right.
law says.
Right. Even if it is going to change back to what it was next year, at least
Yeah.
at this point, it explains.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, we don't know
Because then
where.
if we change it and it changes back, now we're allowing it everywhere and the
stuck- yeah,
state
now we're
said,
stuck
okay,
with-
never
with
mind, forget
allowing
it.
it.
That was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So then now we're allowing it everywhere. So that's actually a good point. So
That's
now what do
very
we do?
good. So I think Doug's point is don't do nothing.
wait to see what happens in this
Well,
lawsuit.
that's kind of when we had, if you remember, when we had to do the adult entertainment thing, because if we didn't provide, we had to provide for it. And if we didn't
Yeah,
provide
that
for it, it
was a
could have gone
different
anywhere.
Scenario.
Well, yes and no. I mean,
We provide for it here in two different districts.
right, but what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say is we had to provide for it.
Right.
In that past legislation. So we have to provide for churches too.
We do provide for churches
Yeah,
presently.
exactly.
Presently,
That-
yes.
That's what I'm,
But if we change this and then they change the law back,
could
we're
we,
stuck with that change.
could we just put a notation on the
Exactly.
thing?
Contingent.
Right there,
See,
no.
see state or see state regs. State RSA, I don't know. I'm just,
Contingent on state regs.
What, just leave it as it is.
So,
It is. at
right,
this point.
because
Yeah.
if we did leave it, and so say someone comes in, doesn't know the law, does know the law, and reads that, and they're like, no, you know what, that the town's saying no, but state law says yes. You know, state law trumps town anyway,
Right,
so
right.
even if
Duty
it still
bound to
says
follow
no,
what the State law says.
Yep.
so I say, let's just not do
Leave it
anything.
alone.
Because
We'll
if
take
you
it
have
out.
this
Take it out. You want to take out 5?
I think that makes
Barney.
sense.
I
amendment
have
to
to
that?
agree with Doug. I think it'd be brilliant, Doug.
All right, let's take it out.
Make the motion.
I'd
So-
like a motion that we remove amendment number 4 from discussion at the planning board meeting.
I'll second that.
On a motion by Doug, seconded by Drew. Any further discussion on amendment number 4? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 5. And there are no green or pretty colors other than the
No.
red.
It's just
Yep.
making things.
Just to review the rationale.
I'll entertain a motion if anybody's ready.
Make a motion to move forward to the planning board amendment number 5.
I'll second that.
On a motion by Paul, seconded by Drew, to move amendment number 5 to the planning board. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Number 6, we have some green. Even though limited, but it's lit there. Well, that's kind of a no-brainer that move the square foot limit to the end of the sentence, and it looks like that's basically been done.
It's already been done. Yeah.
Yep, so let's get down to the next one, suggesting moving the square foot limit to the end of the sentence. Imagine that,
It's done again.
and it's done again.
And then the question was, doing the calculations on the square footage requirements. I think that I had discussed that with John.
What's the wishes?
We,
You know,
Right, so the changes would be made to the
Yeah.
residential zone, so then on this next page,
The
the
next
residential, commercial, like that was in the the highlighted yellow is just sort of like the example of,
right,
Right.
okay, I just wanted to clarify that, okay.
we would just do the same.
What's
Does
your
that answer
pleasure?
the question that was in blue about how many duplexes or townhouses would be allowed on a lot?
Um,
I'm trying to remember when we had that.
yeah, so,
discussion.
so putting in some calculations in this residential zone will answer that question.
We would do similar calculations, what we have in the
All right.
RC zone. Add those.
Pleasure?
I'll make a motion. Present amendment 6 to the planning board.
With calculations.
With the calculations
Calculations
Yep.
and the rationale.
and the rationale.
Second.
Motion by Drew, seconded by Doug. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Well, use up your yellow ink cartridge on this one.
Yeah.
7.
All
Good
right.
grief.
So when I was going through the zoning ordinance and sort of fixing some of these other areas, I realized that there were some inconsistencies with. So let's see, it is in the Lakeshore residential zone specifies where your street frontage is supposed to come from, the access.
Yep.
None of these other zones clarified that.
Specifies that.
So that's what this is just a suggestion to just,
If there's multiple, they have to pick one. That's basically
right,
what you're saying.
right,
Mhm.
right. So where they're gonna get their driveway from.
'Cause
has to
that would be
from
their-
the frontage,
right.
not from another.
Right.
And that ties into their
Right.
911 address as well. So
Yep.
So this is just to clarify each zone, that explanation,
Exactly, that's.
and each
that's
and every
what-
one of them, so it
Yep.
matches the other one.
Yes,
Makes
it's
sense.
just for consistency.
Yep.
yeah,
And so Drew didn't have a chance to add his 2 cents in on 7 or 8
What
on his
happened, Drew?
rationale.
Yeah, I know.
But does it
She
change?
slacking.
was tired. She was tired of my suggestions. So my question on this though is this going to raise any red flags with anybody with regard to what they already may have or may be expecting
No.
or?
Well,
It's just
doesn't
moving
change it.
forward if someone came in after this passes in March.
Yeah.
Well, once the planning board puts it forward, it technically goes into effect until it's
Right,
either
when that public
ratified or.
hearing is, yeah, when the public hearing notice is posted, correct, you're right. I don't know, it's up to you guys. There's just something that was an inconsistency I found, and I just wanted to point it out.
Yep.
So did you put in the rationale in yellow then?
I
The very
did,
bottom.
Yeah. So the only thing I would say, just consistent across all zones instead of with other.
okay,
Say that again.
Just change it from this amendment moves the existing special exception criterion to its own section to be consistent across all
To
zones.
be consistent.
we're on number 7,
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
you're on number 8,
Am I? Oh, sorry.
But it's the same concept,
yeah,
like, same
It's,
exact
it's just
So
a
the
clarification.
that
Oh,
last,
sorry about that. Okay.
after the last comma there to be consistent with.
to be consistent across all zones,
Cross.
Okay.
All zones.
Yeah.
all right.
Anything else on 7? I will entertain a motion.
All right, I'll make that motion to Present proposed amendment number 7 to the planning board with that minor edit on the rationale.
Second.
Who wants a second?
Doug did. He was louder. And a motion by Drew, seconded by Doug. Any further discussion on amendment number 7? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 8.
Okay, so number 8 again was another funky area to where special exception criteria was stuck in with a different section. So again, just to be consistent with the existing zones that have its own section for special exceptions, I'm just pulling that out of the permitted uses section and creating its own special exception section.
You get that worded right?
You've been practicing that?
Yeah, exactly. Say it 3 times fast.
Yeah.
Conditions.
Yep, again, none of the wording has changed. It's just gonna live in its own section, that's all.
Just to be consistent with other
Yeah.
zones.
And I think I've beat that zoning ordinance up enough to try to
Yeah, for
fix
this.
everything and reorganize it and make it really consistent throughout. I'm hoping that next year.
Actually,
we
a
have-
yellow ink cartridge couldn't take any more. John,
But the
you need a nap?
The only suggestion I would have under the rationale is that we should add something that states that this does not change any regulations currently in place, just categorizes them or whatever,
Yeah.
puts them in the correct section.
Trying to make the,
So you're
trying to
saying
make
that
the
they're
ordinance more
grandfathered?
uniform.
Yeah. Jess, you have some language for that you're thinking of?
So maybe at the very beginning, like this amendment does not change any criteria, any
Right.
special exception.
Special exception criteria.
Criteria, and just moves, let's see.
Just moves to be consistent with other zones.
Moves that criteria to its own section
Yeah.
to be consistent with all.
Across
Cross
all
Across all
zones.
That's good.
You read that again?
That works.
So what was it? This amendment?
This amendment moves the existing special exception criteria. This does not change to its own
So
section.
this amendment does not
Does not change.
change
Right, take out,
any special exception criteria.
its own section.
Just moves that
Only
criteria.
It-
moving it to its own.
Yeah,
section.
only moves
To
the
its own section to be consistent.
criteria to its own section. Be more consistent.
Make a motion to move amendment number 8 to the planning board with the rationale amendment.
On motion by Paul, seconded by Doug. Any further discussion on amendment number 8? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Well, I think with the exception of the ZAC rationale wording, I think those are all in position, so we don't need to address that.
Yep.
John, go home and go to bed.
Efficient meeting,
But to add,
efficient meeting, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
add to everything else going on in my life. Now have a 2-year-old in full-time residence. My daughter-in-law, my son and daughter-in-law are moving up here from Kentucky. So my daughter-in-law and the granddaughter are here. And he's finishing sale of the house, packing up. So.
You have a full house.
Yes, you have a 2-year-old
And
running
my
around the
prior-
house.
And my absolute top priority is to move enough of my crap out of the house to build a bathroom in the
I would
basement.
like to talk about this after.
One bathroom in the
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh,
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to interrupt, but can we adjourn? I'd like to make a motion.
So moved. You're just jealous because I usually do it.
Sit in that seat next time.
Can we just,
Go
can
ahead,
we
Jess.
just clarify that
Yes,
these proposed zoning amendments will be presented at the November 15th planning board meeting because we did not specify a date.
Yes.
There.
Note taken.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Check.
Check.
Yeah. And we have a motion and we have a second. As soon as we have that second, we're done.
Second.
There we go. We're done. We're adjourned.
All right.
One of the things too that we, Jessica and I will be on for next year was brought to our attention recently. Holly Brown